to start. So this is how they will come out. The wonderful thing about stuffed grape leaves is you look very metropolitan when you make them, but you can't make them wrong. So it's a wonderful thing because no matter how you cook them, what you fill them with, they're going to be right for you. I kind of consider them a Mediterranean 2x4. And oftentimes here in the States, the only way we see them is stuffed with just rice or some pine nuts in them. We're actually making them with stuffed lamb. It's how we prefer them. Yes. We'll use it as a main course or tapas when we do it. So we get our lamb from 5th Street Farm. It's a farm actually in Charles County now, but it is a young Calvert County 22-year-old woman who has bought her own farm. She was 4-H in Calvert the whole way through. And so now she does all of her own raising there. And if you go to her Facebook page, 5th Street Farm, right now she's taking her pre-orders for beef and pork because the cows and the pigs are about to go to the butcher. So you can find everything you do, especially if anybody talks about meat shortages. It's wonderful. We get a quarter cow and a half a pig at a time when we do our orders. So typically for our family, since we have 5, we do about 2 pounds of ground lamb when we make this. We did a first order last night, so we have about 1 pound of ground lamb now. And then Erick, if you'll just. So we have some that we did not cook last night. Now, a lot of times with stuffed grape leaves, many people cook them kind of in a boiling method on the stove top in a deep pan and then put a heavy plate on top of them. You cover it with water or chicken broth. My boys don't like the slimy texture of the grape leaves when it's done that way. So we bake them instead, and oftentimes people will grill them too. So the batch that we have left over now, we're going to bake, but then we're going to grill off tonight to make them hot. So all we do is when they're ready to go in the bake pan, we just put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan. You do not cover it. It's just enough to kind of get that steaming texture. And then we just do a lemon. And if you don't have any fresh lemons at your house, lemon juice straight from your fridge is okay. We had already preheated the oven to 350 degrees.
Wow.
Okay. So we're not going to cover it. Typically we'll cover it, but apparently we ran out of foil last night. Down to look.
You're right. Wanted to look into my foil.
Down to look. And when we bake it, you just bake it for about 25 to 30 minutes. We cook everything before we put it into the grape leaf. If you are not, you can do the mixture where you don't cook it ahead of time, in which case you want to bake for about an hour as opposed to 25, 30 minutes. So if you want to break that up. So the first part of this is making the mixture. With the amount that we are doing now, I use about 1/4 of an onion. That's not what it is.
Oh, onion first.
Our pans get hot really quick, so we don't have to worry about it. Just put in olive oil that's going to be the bottom of the pan while you sweat the onion. I should preface this with, we don't have a set recipe. When I was in Greece and we were talking with our family and we asked about the recipe, it started with take 1 goat. And at that point, we figured probably not a recipe that we're going to be able to use where we start with take your family goat. So we kind of improvised. We did look up several different recipes so we can give you a better idea of measurements as opposed to how I just do it. So like I said, I start with about 1/4 of an onion.
Kathryn, you're breaking up. I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Okay. So I start with about 1/4 of an onion. I like white onion, but again, there's no wrong way to make this. So I just take my onion, I dice it, and then as soon as it's all chopped and ready to go, I'm going to put it in the skillet because I have the olive oil already cooking on that. Some of those didn't dice all the way. And then you're going to just let the onion sweat for just a little bit in there before you start adding the ground beef or ground lamb. You can do it with beef if you want it with meat. You can do it with ground pork. You can do it vegetarian style. We're going to talk about basically all the alternatives that we have found that we like the best as we make these. So you're just going to let the onions start sizzling and sweating.
And about on a medium heat.
Yeah, and just do it about medium. Although the lamb is already ground up, I prefer to break it up even more before I put it in the pan. With regard to spices, according to recipes, you're going to use about a quarter teaspoon of the spices that we're putting in. And today we're using cinnamon, cumin. I like to add cloves to mine, so I add some ground cloves in it as well. I will say when I have looked around and realized I couldn't find some of my cinnamon or cumin in a rush, I've used Chinese spice, which works well as an alternative to get that in there. And then just salt and pepper to taste as well. And then we throw in fresh oregano and mint, especially now, because right now it's all fresh and in the garden. And so just take off as much as you like. If you're doing measurements, like I said, from our research, the recipes all say for about 1.5 pounds of lamb, you're going to do about a quarter teaspoon of cumin, cinnamon. They don't do cloves, but we like the clove flavor in there. And then just, I like to add the oregano in with the onions to begin, just to get that all sweating down together. The fresh mint I add almost at the end. I should say, oh, I didn't, that we cook the rice kind of during the same time that we're doing all of this, but last night, since we were making the first part, we did the rice. So we have about a cup, cup and a half of rice that we would add into the mixture. I like just doing the rice separate and adding it in at the end just to get everything all mixed up. So once the onions are sweating a little bit, you can just break up the ground lamb and put it in. Erick's going to toss in the lamb, and then at that point we'll start adding the seasonings into the lamb. With regard to the mint, it's growing really great right now, so I took off about 6 leaves of mint that I chop up. The mint is something I put in towards the end of the cooking. I'm just going to dice it ahead of time so that we're ready after. It's kind of when that lamb is almost all the way brown, but not quite, is when I'll add the mint, because I still want that to come through a little bit in the baking session and not be all the way cooked down. When the other part that we're going to do is the traditional Greek village salad that we will be cutting in. And the traditional salad is, we've always had it in Greece. There is no lettuce. So we have our little helper. Many may come in at the time. Our boys do like to cook. I will say one of the things that we learned from No Time to Cook down in Solomon's Island is wonderful plastic knives. So if you have children or grandchildren that cook with you, these are a wonderful set to get. You can actually just get them on Amazon. But these knives, these big cooking knives, they're plastic. They won't hurt themselves, but they will actually cut onions and all kinds of other vegetables so that they can safely help them. I'm not worried about them taking off the finger. With regard to the Greek salad, just while the meat's browning, very simple. It's going to be 1 green pepper, about a half or a quarter of a red onion, depending on the size. This is a big red onion, so we'll only use a quarter. A cucumber, and tomatoes. Typically, we use vine tomatoes, but cherry tomatoes are fresh and easy to pull out of the garden at the moment, so we're using cherry tomatoes. It will have feta cheese at the top, and then you just season with salt and pepper and olive oil. We'll show you that as we go along. Much to my mother's dismay, I do not like olives, so I do not put black or green olives in my Greek salad. Feel free to add them, but it's chef's choice, so I don't put them in my salad. So now that it's started, I'm just going to season it. Like I said, the recipes say about a quarter. I season it to how our family's tastes are. So just add in, the lamb right now is still pretty much all pink, so it's a good time to season it. Just got it mixed up with the oregano and the onions. We like the cinnamon flavor coming through with the lamb. It complements really well, so we add just pretty much about an actual teaspoon of cinnamon as opposed to a quarter of a teaspoon. Then we're gonna let this kind of all cook down, and the closer it gets to where it's really starting to brown is when we'll add in the rice. Now, the first time we made this, we added currants into the recipe. The second time I did it, I didn't have currants in my fridge or in my pantry, so used raisins. Turns out my boys actually prefer the raisins over the currants, and it actually gives a really good complementary flavor to the lamb. So we do it with raisins now instead, but like I said, currants or even pine nuts can go in with it. Sometimes, depending on the veggie intake, I'll shave in some carrots into it as well.
It's a good way to sneak it in there.
And like I said, there's no wrong way to make a grape leaf. You can put anything you want in it. It's just like a burrito. You cook it to your taste, use whatever meat you want, and whatever cooking style. Like I said, most people boil them. My boys just didn't like the temperature or the texture. That's why we bake them instead. So the lamb's really starting to get a good brown on it. So we'll drop the rice in. There you go. And so we're, like I said, that's about a cup of cooked rice, because I cook about 2 cups with it. Just put that in. We're gonna let that actually just kind of cook down a little bit, cook back up with all of the ground beef. Ground beef, I keep saying that, and it's lamb. I've never actually made it with ground beef, but the lamb itself has a lot of fat, oil that comes out of it, so I don't put a ton of olive oil at the bottom of the pan, just enough really to sweat the onions, because the meat itself provides all the other juice that I need. I know that sometimes some of the recipes were calling for the use of a full quarter of a cup of olive oil for this cooking process. I just find that too much when I'm using lamb to actually put into a pan. But if at any point in time you're noticing you're not having enough juice, just add the olive oil into it to get it to that texture where we're all cooked. So because the rice is a little cold, I just gotta break it down a little bit while we're doing that. Erick's starting to make the Greek salad. One of the things I like to do is I cut the vegetables smaller. So with a cucumber slice, I actually quarter the cucumber slice to go into the salad bowl. It drives my mom crazy, but I like to be able to pick up the cucumber, the tomato, and a red onion all in one bite. So I cut mine down smaller, just however you like your vegetables cooked. So now that the rice is actually mixed in, I'm gonna add in the raisins. Like I said, traditionally it really is a currant that you would put in with this style of grape leaf. And again, no set measurement, just how much my boys like. And at about the time that I put in these raisins, now is when I'm going to add the mint in as well. And so I just had taken the mint leaves, diced them down, and chopped them up. Just put it in, and at this point now it's only going to cook about another minute or so. Now, I'm a big believer in you have to sample everything as you cook it to make sure you get the seasons the way you want them to be. Otherwise, if it ends up bland to you later, you won't know. I'm going to add a little more salt. And just a dash more of the cinnamon. So I don't know, I'll bring it up a little bit. That's how the mixture looks, kind of all blended in together. Now, typically when I am making this, I do not have time to let it chill the way I'm letting it cool down a little bit now. I highly recommend that because when we did it yesterday, I'm like, wow, this is a really civilized way to wrap grape leaves as opposed to doing it piping hot. But while we'll do this, we will do the village salad while that's just cooling down a little bit. So Erick's been dicing the red onion. I'll do the green pepper. Oh, good thing is you wanted extra anyway. Right. So if you want to do it, you can do it. And so again, I just do it in small chunks because I like to have a little bit of every bite. And then again, it's such a simple salad, but it's one that I generally take when I'm going to a cookout or anything else because I find that just simple green peppers, cucumber, tomato, and red onion can complement almost any dish. So it's not one that I think we ever have to worry about competing flavors. And since you only dress it with olive oil and salt and pepper, you don't have to worry about a lot of competing flavors or dressing sitting out if you're taking it to a cookout or anything like that. So again, I'm just going through this entire green pepper right now. And that was a pretty big cucumber, so probably 3/4 of it. Probably don't need the full thing. Sorry, our knives are being loud. Any questions while we are doing this part of it? So again, normally, like I said, I do it with a vine tomato. I like the flavor of the vine with it, but cherry tomato season, so it's kind of the perfect summer salad. Oh, so here's my, yeah, I was gonna say, Erick's like, do you want to talk about the bags? So these are my favorite things. I will put the pitch line in. We buy all biodegradable sandwich bags, which are wonderful. So you don't have to worry about the waste. You can get them just from Grape.com. But they do are all biodegradable. I will say though, if you're putting meat in them, label the bag ahead of time because it's hard to tell which leftover meat you put in the bag if you don't label it ahead of time.
Kathryn, are those recyclable? I mean, can you reuse those bags or are they just a one-time use?
These are a one-time use, although you can, just like you can any sandwich bag, rinse it out and reuse it. I will say the ones that we get for the reused ones, we buy these from Grove just because for my boys to take snacks every day, and these can actually go in the dishwasher too and be reused all the time.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
These lasted all school year for them. And I think for it's like $3 for the permanent reusable ones. It's for a pack of 2. It wasn't bad at all. And then we get these, and you know, we have the big size, the small size, the smaller snack size. It's just nice because then I know with as much sandwich bags and snack bags as we use in this house, that at least they're biodegradable. But like I said, that's Grove.com. We also buy all of our paper towels and toilet paper because they make it all from bamboo and aloe. So it's all, what's the word? Not recyclable.
No, it's
I don't know. When it grows really fast, I can't think of the word. But that's how we use all of those. And we didn't have to worry about during the season. So if you see the salad, and on 1 second, we'll just toss it a little bit. So just to get an idea, I mean, it is just chunks of all the different veggies in there. And it is truly just, you add salt No set measurement. It is literally salt and pepper into your taste. I will say it takes more salt and pepper than you would think your first time. So it's one of those things. I mean, I've done it a gazillion times now, so I just kind of, I think it's muscle memory at this point, but season it. And I do all of this before I add the olive oil and make sure I like where the salt and pepper is at the point in time.
Feta last?
Yeah, you can add the feta last or right before you add the olive oil. We're not going to add the olive oil right at the moment because we don't want them to get soggy. And again, as you've added the tomato or the salt to the veggies anyway, they're going to sweat down and get a little liquidy, and so you don't want to add the olive oil until after you've done all the seasoning so that you don't get mushy vegetables.
Generally when you're ready to serve, right?
Right before ready. But we just do feta crumbles, pretty standard staple in our kitchen. All right, so we can wrap, honey.
We can wrap?
We can wrap. I hope everybody's ready to wrap with us.
Excitement, we're wrapping.
So just any standard baking dish is fine to use. Okay.
Okay, so if you have not wrapped a grape leaf before, this gets exciting and it can be a daunting process for those of us who learn slower than others. During my study last night, I wasn't doing well. My wife told me to wrap it like a cigar. Never wrapped a cigar, so that wasn't a visual I could use. So generally speaking, my grape leaves came out a little bit fatter and a little bit short. Don't be embarrassed by that. Keep them together, keep the leaf tight, and you should do well with it. But aesthetically pleasing, unless you want to become a master at this, as long as you've got the meat and the stuffing in the grape leaf, however it gets rolled, it's good.
So this is one of Erick's favorite meals, but last night was the first time he actually participated in any of the rolling. So just standard jarred grape leaves. I'm a Giant shopper, Erick's a Safeway shopper, but
You get them at Giant and not Safeway,
I think you can actually get them at either store, right?
then done.
Okay, so the grape leaves itself come in brine. When you look at the recipes, many say rinse them out first. We actually don't mind the brine flavor that comes with it. It's not, it kind of complements, especially if you don't put a ton of salt into your meal. Don't look, it won't, every time you open it.
No, that's boiling water.
Every time you open the oven, you let heat out.
There's a lot of
So you're just gonna take your grape leaves, that's your pile.
That would be a question to ask, who left the heat out? Right?
The important part with the grape leaf, when you're gonna wrap it, you want the vine side, so that part where you can feel the actual ridges of the grape leaf, that's gonna be the side that you're putting the mixture in. So the smooth side's gonna go down on your wrapping surface. Not surface, surface.
No.
And then I just take about a spoonful. Now I will say.
Would you move the jar?
Oh, yeah, I can move the jar, sorry.
Thanks.
Let me move some of the other items as well. So some of the leaves are going to be smaller than others. And so Erick's got, when they're really small, I just double them up. So I'll just put them end to end because there is no use in trying to make a super tiny stuffed grape leaf. Now, we found last night that different people like to roll different ways.
Yes, we did.
When I do the grape leaf, I put the bottom tails up first because you'll always have a little bottom tail. And then I bring the sides in. And then again, you're just rolling it like a little cigar, so you end up with a nice little tight wrapped loop. Erick found he likes bringing in the sides and then doing the roll.
Generally, I just panic.
So there's no wrong way. Again, this is the best thing about grape leaf. Whatever ingredients you want to use, however you want to wrap them, it's all fine. They do tend to stick together a bit. But you're just gonna, again, you're gonna just take about a spoonful to get in. And then you're just gonna be wrapping as you go along.
Well,
Eric will often break out in wrap while I do this. Any live demonstration?
I'm focusing on this first. So this is about as good as my cigar gets, if you can see that. It's not as disciplined as hers, but it is much better than what I was doing last night.
So you do want to make sure that it is tightly wrapped, because as they cook, the grape leaf's going to expand a bit, and you will lose some of your filling if you don't have them tightly wrapped, and it'll just end up in the actual dish. I'm just going to do a couple more real quick, and I'm going to use some of the bigger leaves because they just, it's a really good size grape leaf.
See, I think this is a tight roll.
But see how you have the ends sticking out? You need it all wrapped in so there's no ends out, because if you have the end out, there's the option or the opportunity for your filling to escape.
Right.
Kathryn, I'm really glad to see that you did not blanch yours first, because the recipes, when I've seen it, say you take it out and you have to blanch all those leaves and put them on paper towels, and that's a pain in the neck.
It is a pain, and like I said, many say they do that really just to rinse the brine off, but they've already, especially when you read the jars, they've already been blanched, and then they're just soaked in brine. So as long as you don't mind the brine flavor, you don't have to go through all of those extra steps. And again, part of it is, you know, it's a trial and error, but you get your flavors right, you get the seasons the way you want. A little bit of the brine actually really just helps enhance it.
Okay, thank you.
So as we wrap them, and I won't even, see the tail sticking out on that one? You don't want it like that, but that's okay. You're gonna put them into a tight row, and that just keeps them all together. Like I said, a lot of people boil them, and when they do that, they put them in the bottom of the pan, they put them all tight together, and then you cover them with either chicken stock or water until the leaf is completely covered, that leaf cigar is completely covered. Then you put a heavy heat-resistant plate down on top. That actually helps weigh it down for the grape leaves for expansion purposes to keep everything inside. And when you're doing it that way, you're actually going to boil them for about 45 minutes. But it's the same concept with this, with you hold them, you push them all tight together to keep that expansion, but you don't need to put a heavy plate over top of them at all. And then, like I said,
can I ask, since everything is cooked, why does it take so long if you boil them? Are the grape leaves not cooked, or they're tough?
So they can be tough if you don't cook them. And a lot of the recipes, so, as I said, some people don't cook the mixture beforehand. They'll just do the meat, they'll throw a raw egg into it and then add in currants and rice, and then they'll roll it all just like it's cold, almost like a meatloaf before you're getting ready to bake it. And so in that process, you do need to cook it much longer. This way we find, especially with 3 boys, it goes much quicker. And so we're just cooking it all in the skillet, wrapping it. Like I said, I normally wrap them hot anyway, and then we can throw them right in for 20 to 30 minutes. And it's at 350 degrees is where we bake it. And it is just to get really the grape leaf at that point cooked. So when it comes out, and blending the flavors. So when it comes out, when it's done, you end up with a really tight little grape leaf cigar. Now these aren't hot because we cooked these last night, but I've been known to eat them cold in the morning. And then I don't know if you can see the filling. So the lamb and the raisins and the rice are all wrapped right up in there. And like I said, to us, it's a Mediterranean 2-bite burrito. And then you have that. Now I will say a lot of times when we do this, we end up with extra mixture. My 4-year-old prefers just the mixture on his plate as opposed to the grape leaf. And it can be good all by itself. My 8 and 10-year-old like to play with the grape leaves as if they're our little cigars for them, so they prefer those. But when how much time do we have left on there?
No.
My sous chef did not set the timer. Although they're actually looking really good, so we can leave out. So you're kind of Gonna see when they come out. The water at this point, because we just put a little bit in at the bottom of the pan, we don't cover the grape leaves, will have evaporated, and then you end up with your piping hot cigar. I'm gonna get a different spoon. So it does come straight out. You'll have some of the steam still coming off, but you have your beautiful grape leaf. No idea if that works. It didn't sound good. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's pretty hot.
Kind of hot.
Yeah, it's pretty hot.
The grape leaf itself is soft, so you're not having to, fight through the grape leaf, which is why we bake that part off. We're gonna end up filling typically with the pound of lamb that we have in and a cup of grape leaves. We fill 1.5 to 2 of these with just that amount of the lamb. You don't have to open that one right now. With the lamb and the rice. Last night we did
1.5.
Yeah, we did this one and a whole one, which were these, and we may have snapped. Okay.
Kathryn,
Yes,
Kathryn,
yes,
you freeze them?
you can. I would freeze them before you bake them, though.
Okay.
So when they're in this state, you can take them, and then just like when you're freezing fruits or vegetables, I freeze them first on like a cookie sheet that I put in the freezer, so they're not touching each other like this, and each one individually freezes, and then just slide them into one of those large freezer bags, and then you can have them, and that way they don't stick together and you don't lose the actual shape or have them tear. So once they've individually frozen, put them in that, and then when you bring them out, bake them. Or like I said, we're really excited with the cold batch actually here. We're gonna grill these tonight to see how they are grilled off to make them hot. Because when I was looking at recipes to find out how other people cook these, that was one of the guys said he started grilling them, so we're really excited to try that. And so now just straight back to the village salad. At this point in time, I love feta, so I probably put in more than the average person.
It's very good that way.
And I just toss in as much feta as I like. At this point, just gonna mix it back up again. Olive oil. I'm like, where's my olive oil? And then you just add, add your olive oil. And then
it's just to get a light coat on
Yep.
everything, correct?
Basically all your vegetables are gonna look shiny. You don't want it soggy. You don't want a pile of olive oil sitting at the bottom of your bowl. You just want to make it just keeps all those flavors blended together and gives them all just a really nice shine at that point. That's how the village salad looks. And then if you are an olive loving heathen, you will add your black or green olives in at that point in time. I will say with this, if you want to add some fresh oregano straight from your garden in and just chop that up and add that into the salad during the summer, it's a really easy way to just change the depth of the flavor a little bit. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, I have a question on the salad, please.
Absolutely.
Okay. Since you had the tomatoes there with the salt and the cucumbers, and you had mentioned the released water, do you ever drain that water off before you add the oil?
It depends. So in this one, I didn't let it sit for a long time. Sometimes when Eric and I are making a bunch of dishes for the day, we'll make the salad part at the beginning, and I'll have it in the fridge waiting. And when there is actually water that you can see at the bottom, absolutely drain that off, because you don't want that. This one, it hasn't been sitting long, so when I tossed it with the feta, I could get down to the bottom and see I didn't have any. And so if you're going to go from straight making to serving, you don't have to worry about it. But if you are letting it sit, do drain that off. I hate soggy vegetables.
Yeah.
The other part is,
Agree.
if you were going to take this as a dish to someone else's house, then you might want to consider having your transport dish, and then when you go to serve, as you transfer it over, you're going to be able to negate some of that condensation that gets built up.
Yeah, I always add the olive oil, and
That always gets done that.
gets done last. And if I'm taking it, so for example, we have friends who have a big beach party every year, and the one thing she asks is for me to make enough of the Greek salad for 20 people. So all I do is dice the veggies here and do that, and then once I'm down there, I salt, pepper, and olive oil it there, so it's that straight to the table, so I don't have to worry about the condensation. But if I salted it here, by the time we got to her house 30, 40 minutes away, it would be a soggy mess.
Okay. All right. And do you actually put your tomatoes in the refrigerator?
It depends. So typically our big tomatoes sit on our windowsill, and that's where we have them sitting. And cherry tomatoes we keep in a bowl in the fridge.
Oh, okay.
Just a personal preference.
Yep. Yeah. We think they lose their sweetness if you stick them in the fridge.
Well, and I think just because we haven't found out that cherry tomatoes, because they are sweeter by nature, but the vine tomatoes or the big beef eater tomatoes, they stay right on our windowsill.
Yeah, especially depending on who you buy from and where you buy from. If you get from the market, like Bowen's, or if you get from a farmer's market or just on the side of the road, of course those are going to be out in the open. But depending on which market you get them from, if they're somewhat refrigerated already, I kind of go with if I buy it and it's cold, it stays cold. If I buy it warm, it stays warm.
Okay. All of ours are coming out of Cheryl's garden, so.
Right, I was going to say winter shopping is completely different from summer. Like I said, typically with this in the winter, I'm using dried oregano and dried mint leaves just because I don't have fresh. But pretty much from 3 weeks ago on, we can just use all the fresh oregano, mint, fresh tomatoes, and my cucumbers haven't grown yet, so they're store-bought cucumbers. But otherwise, if you can take it straight from the garden, it just makes it all that much better.
So you want to talk about pairing real quick?
Karen?
Yes. What would you pair these with?
Oh, because he's asking about wine. But you know me. I like it with a white wine in the spring and summer, and I like it with a red wine in the winter.
So it can go either way. For example, as we were tasting and sampling last night, I was drinking a red, and it did not offend me. Often when we've had the Greek salad, that will be, because that is something that we do during the summer, the fall, the winter. We generally have Greek salad all year long. So it really would be your preference, but you can probably pair them with either. And then whatever wine you prefer, whether it be a Cabernet or your different types of wine, that is entirely on you as well.
I will say one thing. When you do this with a 2-pound lot, so again, for us, for a family of 5, we do this. The boys generally eat about 10 themselves, but it'll take about a jar and a half of grape leaves when you're doing it to that size. The great thing about grape leaves is you can keep some in the jar and in your fridge, but you can actually chop them up, and you can add them to lots of other recipes in the same place where you would have put spinach or collard greens or anything like that. So make sure you use the leftover grape leaves if you're not going to do any other stuffing before they go bad from the jar. Just use them as you would, again, a spinach, a collard green, or anything like that. They work really well. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I missed, after you get them in the casserole dish, then is there a final step?
Yeah. And sorry, we did that at the very beginning. So what will happen is you pour just enough water that it's like the bottom lip. You want the bottom part of the, I got about a half in there. So for a casserole dish, it's about a 1/4 cup of water. And that's really just so they're steaming. Typically I'll cover it with foil, but as my husband told me, I didn't cut well enough, and I used the last of our foil last night. And that just lets them kind of steam a little bit. And then I take a half of a lemon and I squeeze the lemon over the top of it, and just at that point you put it in to bake. But you do need that bit of moisture in the pan. 1, it keeps the grape leaves from sticking to the pan, and 2, it keeps them from drying out and being really brittle.
How long do you leave them in the oven?
Depends on your oven. So between 20 and 30 minutes, because it depends on how true your 350 is. So at our last house, it was 20 minutes, and at this house, it's 25 minutes. This oven is really true to 350. Our other one wasn't, so that was kind of trial and error for figuring that out. So, yeah, the other one was really old.
The more experienced the oven, the more time it might need.
Well, that one needed less because it's hot. But so about 25 minutes at real 350 degrees. But if you guys have idiosyncrasies in your oven, you've already figured that out and can calculate the differences. But at 350, it's about 25 minutes. Which is why, because when we're cooking them, we cook all the mixture first, because that way, as you saw, that doesn't take a long time to brown your lamb and soften up the rice and the raisins and everything. We'll do the rice in the rice cooker, so that's cooking, and it's about ready at the point that my onions have cooked down and my lamb to toss it all in, and then I can just quickly wrap and go.
So there's something you said about doing the rice ahead of time and then putting the rice in the refrigerator to chill for a while. That can make the rice a little bit more manageable as you're working.
I've also been known to cheat, depending again on what's in my pantry, and just use the Uncle Ben's 90-second cook rice and just toss that in as well, depending on if we'd run out of rice and I hadn't realized it or not. So again, the wonderful thing about this is there's no wrong way to do it. Like I said, we've added carrots into it. We've added a couple other veggies to just kind of sneak them in on the boys.
As long as it's not the vegetarian version.
Yeah, no, Eric will not permit me to just do the rice and pine nut one in the house. Anything else? Any other questions? I'm sorry, trying to think of real simple, basic ingredients. Not a lot of ingredients. And again, the seasoning thing is just, the majority of the recipes all did say, they all called for a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, cinnamon, and oregano. And I just like the clove flavor that it brings out with the lamb, so I add in some of the cloves as well.
And if you notice, from our start time, our preparation time was about 20 minutes. So if you figure the 20 minutes and then 25 to 30 minutes goes in the oven, you're looking at about a 50-minute process from start to finish. So if you were going to cook this and you're trying to figure out how to cook it, when to cook it before tabling it, that's a consideration.
My husband was very excited for this opportunity to cook because he'd been asking for stuffed grape leaf for about when we went on quarantine isolation. I was able to delay it all until now.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks.
Thank
Good
you.
show, Kathryn. Thank you, Eric.
Live.
Thanks both.
It
Great.
was wonderful.
Well, I didn't think I'd ever be interested in preparing these, but now I might.
Thank you so much.
You know, for boys, it's a really easy way to get them to have a lot of really good vitamins and what they consider a very fun meal. And they reheat great the next day. I should say that. They really do heat really well the next day. I'll often take them into work the next day. I will squeeze just a little bit of lemon juice on them before I throw them in the microwave. But then I just heat them up for about a minute and a half in the microwave, and they're perfect.
Yeah, I never thought I'd make them again after all the pain in the neck about having to blanch all those leaves first. Now that I don't have to do that, yeah, I'll buy the jar.
I wouldn't do it either if I had to do that step. I have to tell you. But no, you certainly won't. Again, you just learned how to roll last night, so it worked really well. So we thank you because now I have a helper for rolling grape leaves.
Good job.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.